Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I slept with him once. Cindy stood across the kitchen island with both hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had long gone cold. Her voice barely shook. She had practiced this conversation. I could see it in the way she held my eyes, waiting for me to yell, accuse her, or throw the mug across the room. Instead, I smiled. Funny, I said. His SUV was outside our house last night. The silence hit harder than any argument ever could. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at me like she'd missed a step walking down the stairs. What? What did you say? You heard me. She blinked twice, then looked toward the window, as if the answer might be waiting outside. I don't know what you're talking about. No? I leaned back against the counter. Then, this should be a pretty short conversation. She swallowed hard. For the first time in 12 years of marriage, Cindy looked genuinely nervous around me. But none of this had started that morning. It had started 6 days earlier. The Friday before Christmas, Cindy asked me to go with her to her company's holiday party. "It'll mean a lot to me," she said while adjusting her earrings in the bedroom mirror. "You've skipped the last two." "Fine," I answered. 1 hour. She smiled. "I'll take it." The party was held at a country club outside town. Good food, loud music, too many people pretending they loved working together. Cindy introduced me to manager after manager until she stopped in front of a tall man wearing a navy blazer. "Owen, this is Trevor Collins. He's on my project team." Trevor smiled first. "So, you're the husband?" "I am." He held out his hand. "I've heard Cindy talk about you." I shook it once. "Really? That's interesting." He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I don't think she's mentioned you more than twice." For a second, his smile disappeared. Then, it came right back. "Guess we're both busy." "Guess so." Cindy laughed a little too quickly and steered the conversation somewhere else. Most people would have forgotten that exchange before dessert. I didn't. The rest of the evening, I noticed little things. Trevor always seemed to know where Cindy was. She laughed harder at his jokes than anyone else's. Twice I caught them making eye contact across the room. Not for long, just long enough to notice. Nothing either one of them did would have proved anything. But it didn't feel right. On the drive home, I asked, "You've known Trevor long?" "About a year." "You two seem comfortable." She looked out the passenger window. "We work together every day." "That's not what I asked." She sighed. "Owen, don't do this." "Do what?" "Turn nothing into something." I nodded once and kept driving. Fair enough. The conversation ended there, or at least she thought it did. 3 nights later, I finished a late concrete inspection on the other side of town. Freezing rain had delayed the job, and by the time I headed home, it was almost midnight. As I turned onto my street, my headlights swept across a dark SUV parked 50 yards from my driveway. I recognized the license plate before I even slowed down. It belonged to Trevor Collins. That was the moment I stopped trusting my instincts and started looking for proof. I didn't pull into my driveway. Instead, I kept driving until I reached the corner, then circled back with my headlights off and parked half a block away. Trevor's SUV never moved. I checked the time. 11:54 p.m. The street was quiet. Most of my neighbors had already turned in for the night. Christmas lights glowed from front porches, making everything look peaceful. It wasn't. I stayed in my truck. 4 minutes later, my front door opened. Trevor stepped outside. He didn't look nervous. He didn't hurry. He pulled his jacket tighter, looked once up and down the street, then walked to his SUV like a man leaving a friend's house after watching a football game. Not like someone sneaking out after sleeping with another man's wife. He drove away. Only after his taillights disappeared did I get out of my truck. When I walked inside, Cindy was sitting on the couch wearing sweatpants with a blanket over her legs. She looked up and smiled. "You're home." "Looks like it." She muted the television. "Long day?" "Yeah. I almost texted you." "You didn't." She shrugged. "I figured you were busy." I nodded and kissed the top of her head. She smelled like vanilla lotion. Underneath it was a faint trace of men's cologne. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for me. "You okay?" she asked. "Why wouldn't I be?" "I don't know." She studied my face for a second. "You just seem different." "I'm tired." She accepted the answer too quickly. That told me almost as much as Trevor's SUV. The next morning, after Cindy left for work, I called Lucas Ramsey. Lucas owned a security company and had been one of my closest friends since high school. He answered on the second ring. You finally ready to upgrade that ancient camera system? I need one hidden camera. Silence. Then, something happened? I'll explain later. He didn't ask another question. I'll be there in an hour. Lucas arrived carrying a small backpack instead of his usual tool case. He walked through the house once, then stopped near the hallway that connected the garage to the kitchen. This is where people come in without being seen from the front windows, he said. Exactly. He looked at me carefully. You expecting somebody? I already saw somebody. That was enough. He mounted a tiny motion-activated camera inside a smoke detector above the hallway. Invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. When he finished, he handed me my phone. It records automatically, he said. Cloud backup. Nobody can erase it. Good. Before leaving, he rested a hand on my shoulder. Owen, whatever this is, I know. You gonna keep your head? I looked toward the hallway. I'm not interested in revenge. What are you interested in? The truth. Lucas nodded once. Then don't confront anyone until you've got it. I wasn't planning to. That evening, Cindy surprised me with my favorite steak dinner. She smiled more, touched me more, asked more questions. It almost looked like she was trying to save something. The only problem was she didn't know I'd already stopped believing words. From that point on, I was only going to believe evidence. The camera didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed just after 10:30. Motion detected. I was sitting in my truck outside a supply warehouse, finishing paperwork before heading home. I opened the live feed without taking a breath. The hallway was empty. Then the garage door opened. Trevor Collins stepped inside carrying a paper bag from a local restaurant. He wasn't looking over his shoulder. He wasn't checking for cameras. He walked through my house like he belonged there. I watched him disappear around the corner toward the kitchen. The recording ended a minute later. I didn't drive home. There was nothing to gain by catching them in the act. Anger solves very little when you're trying to win. Instead, I downloaded the video, backed it up, and drove to a 24-hour diner. I sat there for almost an hour with a cup of black coffee, writing down the exact time Trevor arrived. When I finally got home, his SUV was gone. Cindy was upstairs reading. There you are, she said when I walked into the bedroom. I thought you were working late. I was. She smiled and set her book aside. I missed you. I looked at her for a moment. Did you? The question caught her off guard. What does that mean? It means I asked if you missed me. Of course I did. I nodded once. Good. She waited for another question. None came. The next few days, I noticed her changing. She started texting me during work. Hope your meeting goes well. Drive safe. Love you. Months had gone by without messages like that. Now they arrived every few hours. One evening she came into my office carrying 2 beers. You've been working too much, she said. I've got a lot going on. She handed me 1 bottle. Maybe we should get away for a couple of days. Why? She frowned. What do you mean, why? I mean, why now? She looked away for a second. I just thought we could use some time together. I held her eyes. Did something happen? She answered too quickly. No. That one word told me everything. People telling the truth don't rush. Liars do. The following afternoon, I met Lucas for lunch. He slid into the booth and studied my face. You've got that look. What look? The same look you had after you lost the Johnson construction bid. I got over that. You did. He leaned forward. This isn't business, is it? I shook my head. No. I unlocked my phone and played the hallway footage. Lucas watched the entire clip without speaking. When it ended, he let out a slow breath. Damn. Yeah. You gonna confront her? Not yet. You've already got enough. I've got enough to know she's lying. He frowned. Then, what are you waiting for? I looked out the diner window. For her to tell me how much she's willing to lie. Lucas understood immediately. If she lies once, I'll know she'll lie about everything. That Friday afternoon, I got another motion alert. Then another. Then another. 3 visits. 3 different days. Same man, same garage door, same confidence. By the end of the week, I wasn't trying to figure out whether my wife was cheating anymore. I was trying to figure out how long she'd been living a double life. By Saturday evening, I had enough evidence to end the marriage. I just didn't have the truth from Cindy. There was a difference. Evidence tells you what happened. The truth tells you who someone really is. She came home just after 6, carrying 2 shopping bags. I picked up your favorite pie, she said with a smile. Thought we could have a nice dinner. You've been doing that a lot lately. Doing what? Trying. She forced a laugh. Is that a bad thing? No. I took the bags from her and set them on the counter. It just feels sudden. She looked away. I've been thinking about us. I can tell. Dinner was quiet. She kept trying to fill the silence, talking about Christmas, talking about work, talking about taking a trip after New Year's. I let her talk. Every sentence sounded like someone trying to build a bridge after setting fire to it. When we finished eating, she poured us each a glass of wine. I think we should talk, she said. I agree. She took a slow breath. I haven't been honest with you. I stayed silent. She wrapped both hands around her glass. A few weeks ago, I made a mistake. What kind of mistake? She closed her eyes. It was Trevor. I didn't say a word. She took a shaky breath. I slept with him once. She looked up, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to yell, waiting for me to throw something, waiting for anything except what she got. I smiled. Funny, she frowned. His SUV was outside our house last night. Her face turned white. What? You heard me. She stared at me. No, that's not possible. It happened. She shook her head. You must have the wrong person. I recognized Trevor Collins's license plate before I even parked. The room went completely silent. She looked like she couldn't decide whether to deny it or run. Finally, she whispered, I can explain. I hope so. It wasn't what you think. I haven't told you what I think. It only happened twice. I tilted my head. A minute ago it was once. Tears filled her eyes. I was scared. I know. I didn't know how to tell you. So you tried a smaller lie first. She buried her face in her hands. I'm sorry. I leaned forward. No. She slowly looked up. You weren't sorry when Trevor kept parking outside my house. She opened her mouth but couldn't answer. You weren't sorry when you invited him through my garage. Her breathing became uneven. You weren't sorry while you were lying beside me afterward. Owen. So, don't insult me by pretending you're suddenly sorry because the truth finally caught up with you. A tear rolled down her cheek. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I nodded. You're right. Then I reached beside my chair and picked up a plain black folder. It wasn't. I placed it gently on the table between us. Her eyes locked onto it. What is that? The reason I never argued with you. She hesitated before reaching for it. Then she opened the cover. The first page made her stop breathing. It was a photo of Trevor's SUV parked outside our house at 11:54 p.m., stamped with the date, and that was only the beginning. Cindy stared at the photograph for several seconds before turning the page. The next sheet showed another picture. Same SUV, different night, different timestamp. Her hands started shaking. Owen, keep going. She swallowed hard and flipped to the next page. A still frame from the hallway camera. Trevor stepping through the garage door with a paper bag in one hand. Another page. Trevor leaving 48 minutes later. Another page, a second visit, then a third. Every page carried a date and time. Nothing dramatic, just facts. She stopped halfway through the folder and closed it. I can't look at any more. You should. I know what I did. No, I kept my voice calm. You know what you admitted to. That's not the same thing. Tears rolled down her cheeks. It wasn't every day. I never said it was. It didn't mean anything. I let out a short laugh. You invited another man into our home while I was working late. Don't tell me it meant nothing. She covered her face. I was unhappy. So you decided to make me pay for it? No. Then who was paying for those hotel lunches? Who was paying the mortgage while you entertained Trevor in my house? She had no answer. The silence answered for her. After a long moment, she whispered, I was going to end it. When? She looked down. I don't know. I do. Her eyes lifted. The day you realized you might get caught. She immediately shook her head. That's not true. It is. I swear. You didn't confess because your conscience won. I tapped the folder. You confessed because you thought telling me a smaller version of the truth would keep me from finding the bigger one. She looked at the evidence again. Then at me. How long have you known? I saw Trevor leaving this house 6 days ago. Her shoulders dropped. So, every time you kissed me, I already knew. Every dinner, I already knew. The whole time, I was waiting to see whether my wife would tell me the truth. She started crying harder. I ruined everything. You did. I'll quit my job. That's your decision. I'll block him. That should have happened months ago. I'll go to counseling. You can. It won't change my decision. I'll do anything. I looked directly into her eyes. Anything? She nodded desperately. Yes. You had that chance before Trevor ever walked through my garage. Her breathing became uneven. I made a terrible mistake. I slowly closed the folder. No, she frowned through the tears. A mistake is backing into someone's car. I held her gaze. What you did took planning. I counted on my fingers. You answered his messages. You invited him over. You watched the clock. You waited for me to be gone. You opened my garage. You welcomed him into my home. I let the words settle. None of that happened by accident. She couldn't look at me anymore. The woman who had walked into the kitchen believing she could manage the conversation was gone. All that remained was someone who had finally run out of excuses. I stood, picked up the folder, and walked toward my home office. When I came back, I was carrying one more set of papers. I placed them carefully in front of her. She stared at the first page. Then she whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "Divorce?" Cindy didn't touch the papers. She just stared at the title, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage, like it belonged to someone else. "You already filed?" she asked quietly. "I met with my attorney yesterday." Her eyes shot up. "Yesterday? I don't make decisions while I'm angry." She leaned back in her chair, shaking her head. "So, while I was trying to fix this, I was preparing to end it." She covered her mouth. "I thought we still had a chance. You thought you could control how much truth I knew." The room fell silent. Finally, she asked, "When did you stop loving me?" I didn't. She looked up with a flicker of hope. "I stopped trusting you." The hope disappeared just as quickly. "They're not the same thing." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'll resign on Monday." "I didn't ask you to." "I'll find another job." "It won't change anything." She stood and walked around the table until she was only a few feet away. "Owen, please." I stayed where I was. "For 12 years we've built a life together." "We did. Don't throw it away because of my worst mistake." I looked at her calmly. "I'm not throwing away 12 years." She frowned. "You threw them away one decision at a time." She reached for my hand. I stepped back. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. Her hand slowly dropped to her side. "So, that's it?" she whispered. "Yes." "You won't even fight for us?" "I already did." She stared at me. "For years." I kept my voice steady. "I worked the overtime. I missed holidays. I built this house. I trusted you every single day." I paused. "You were supposed to protect what I was building." She broke down again. "I know." "No." I shook my head. "You know now." Another long silence filled the kitchen. Eventually, she sat back down. Her shoulders looked smaller than I'd ever seen them. "What happens if I don't sign?" "My attorney handles it." She closed her eyes. "You've thought through everything." "I had to." She slowly picked up the pen lying beside the papers. Her fingers trembled. "I never thought I'd lose you." "You didn't lose me tonight." She looked up. "You lost me the night you decided another man deserved what belonged to this marriage." She signed the first page, then the second, then the last. Each signature was slower than the one before. When she finished, she placed the pen on the table and quietly pushed the papers toward me. I wish I could take it all back. I collected the documents into the folder. "I know. You don't believe me. I believe you wish you weren't facing the consequences." She lowered her head. I picked up the folder and walked upstairs. My overnight bag had already been packed. Not because I wanted to leave, because once I made a decision, I wasn't going to hesitate. I carried my overnight bag downstairs with the folder tucked under my arm. Cindy was still sitting at the kitchen table. She hadn't moved. The coffee in front of her had gone cold. When she saw the bag, she stood so quickly her chair scraped across the floor. "You're leaving now?" "Yes." "You don't have to." "I do." She followed me to the front door. "Owen, please." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob but didn't turn around. "There has to be something I can do." "There isn't." "We can go to counseling." "I've already made my decision." "We can start over somewhere else." "You can't start over without trust." She stepped closer. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning it back." I finally turned to face her. "You had months to protect this marriage." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I know." "No." I shook my head. "You only know what it feels like to lose control." She flinched. The words landed because they were true. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she asked the question I think she'd been avoiding all week. Did you ever think about forgiving me? I thought about it. Her eyes filled with hope. And I realized forgiveness and staying are two different things. She stared at me. I'll forgive you someday. She took a small step forward. But I'll never trust you again. That was the first moment she stopped trying to negotiate. She simply cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like someone finally accepting there wasn't another move left to make. She looked around the house, the family photos, the Christmas tree we'd decorated together a week earlier, the life we'd spent 12 years building. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know. I mean it. I believe you. She looked surprised. You do? Yes. I opened the front door. I just believe you're sorry, because it's over. The cold December air rushed inside. She wrapped her arms around herself. After everything, she said softly, is this really how it ends? I looked at her for a long moment. No. She lifted her head, hope returning one last time. It ended the first night you opened that garage door for Trevor. I stepped outside. Today was just the paperwork. I walked to my truck without looking back. The folder rested on the passenger seat beside me. As I started the engine, I glanced across the street. The curb where Trevor's SUV had been parked that first night was empty. Funny how different a street can look once the truth finally clears it. I pulled away from the house without anger, without revenge, without second thoughts. The hardest part wasn't leaving my marriage. The hardest part had been accepting that I was the only one still protecting it. Once I understood that, the decision became easy. The divorce was finalized a little over 6 months later. It was quiet. No courtroom drama, no last-minute surprises, just signatures, paperwork, and the official end of a marriage that had already been over long before either of us admitted it. Cindy reached out a few times during those months. She apologized. She asked if we could meet for coffee. She said she wished she could go back and make different choices. I never argued with her. I never insulted her. I simply told her there was nothing left to discuss, except the divorce. I heard through mutual friends that Trevor Collins transferred to another office a few weeks later. Whether they stayed together or not didn't matter to me anymore. It wasn't my life to worry about. I focused on my business. I spent more time with my family and friends. For the first time in a long time, I stopped wondering what was happening behind my back. The peace I found afterward was worth more than the marriage I lost. Looking back, I don't remember the betrayal as the moment my life fell apart. I remember it as the moment I stopped accepting less than I deserved. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do isn't fight harder for a broken relationship. It's knowing when to walk away with his self-respect still intact. And if I had to make that decision again, I wouldn't change a thing. Thank you for watching.